In a crowded city, there are two flight attendants, Jenny and Paula, where they make their way to the airport. On the road, they share casual conversation with both the pilot and the co-pilot. And during this exchange, they come to realize that because of an incoming thunderstorm, the passenger count on this flight will be lower than usual. The co-pilot, feeling ill, takes some medication in hopes of easing his discomfort. Soon afterward, Jenny and Paula welcome passengers boarding that evening. Among them is George, a teenager who prefers to travel alone and dislikes the feeling of being short of breath. Another passenger, an elderly woman named Bev, explains that her husband, Kingston, has been left unable to move or speak as a result of Parkinson's disease. Meanwhile, another elderly lady settles into her seat with her cat, and Sheila, a military doctor struggling with anxiety, tries to fight her unease about traveling. Joining the group is a foreign couple with limited English, along with Neil and Susan, a pregnant couple whose obsession with cleanliness compels them to carefully disinfect their seats before sitting down. Then comes Henry, who boards carrying a hamster cage. When Ralph, a large man, tries to help him place the cage in the overhead bin, the hamsters unexpectedly attack Ralph. Because the cage cannot fit properly, a flight attendant instructs Henry to transfer it to the cargo hold. As the aircraft prepares for takeoff, Jenny asks Neil to switch off his phone. When he refuses, Henry intervenes and forces him to comply. Jenny sternly warns them both that such behavior could lead to jail time once the plane lands. A little later, Henry watches the news and discovers that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has surrounded a city apartment complex under strict quarantine. Meanwhile, Ralph notices a cut on his thumb and, feeling unwell, asks for some water. Jenny soon notices his unusual posture. When she checks on him, he suddenly vomits. The flight attendants rush to assist, but his mouth begins foaming and he demands to be let off the plane. No one realizes that the cat has slipped free and started licking the vomit on the floor. At that moment, Ralph storms down the aisle and knocks Jenny unconscious. Following the procedure, the co-pilot locks the cockpit door while the pilot attempts to inform the airport of the crisis. Ralph begins pounding on the cockpit door, begging for the plane to stop. Despite his resistance, Henry and George struggle to restrain him. Soon, George, Paula, Sheila, and the others join Henry to subdue Ralph until he grows silent, and they tie his hands. Sheila checks that nobody else is injured, while Jenny breaks down to Paula, confessing her panic and frustration at being unable to help. The pilot then announces that he has received instructions to land immediately and orders everyone to return to their seats. The flight attendants direct the passengers to keep their heads down as the plane descends, the turbulence rattling them violently. Ralph's body slides across the floor, his head banging repeatedly, and Jenny and Paula struggle to drag him back to his seat. While Paula fights to fasten his belt, Ralph suddenly snaps awake, bloodshot eyes glaring, and bites her nose like a feral zombie, inflicting a severe wound. Ralph then loses control again, forcing the passengers to unite once more to overpower him and shove him into the restroom, where they manage to lock him inside. Sheila drapes a scarf over Paula's face and uses the first aid kit to medicate her, buying her precious time and preventing her from going into shock. But Paula continues bleeding heavily and urgently needs professional care. Meanwhile, the pilot fumes as the nearby airport instructs them to hold position despite being informed of the emergency. Defying orders, he decides to dock at a gate not assigned to their flight. Ed, a baggage handler, spots the incoming jet and quickly opens the gate. As chaos erupts, the passengers rush to disembark, while the pilot and co-pilot keep the restroom sealed. Bev and Kingston remain on board, requiring assistance to move. Ed ushers the group inside, but the gate suddenly shuts, and his radio calls receive no response. Forced to continue, they follow him through a set of staff doors leading into the warehouse area. To his shock, every other exit is locked tight, something he insists has never happened before. As the group descends the stairs, he checks the electrical box and confirms the locks are active and the security cameras are still functioning. Just as they debate what to do, the shrill sound of sirens cuts through the silence. Outside, an ambulance and police cars are clearly visible through the glass. Yet when they spot a narrow gap in the window, the passengers quickly seal it with cloth. Soon, a voice announces over the system that they are under lockdown and must wait for assistance. Since Jenny is the only one officially representing the airline, the passengers turn on her, demanding to contact loved ones first and then shouting in anger. Speechless, she struggles to defend herself. Sheila intervenes, reminding the others that she has a medical kit stored in her luggage, which may buy Paula a few more hours. Jenny, accompanied by Ed and a few passengers, goes searching for Sheila's bag. But at that moment, the power cuts out. Ed switches on his flashlight and guides them back to the plane, only to discover that the pilot and co-pilot are missing. When Jenny opens the restroom door, she is horrified to find blood splattered everywhere. In the chaos, a passenger attempting to grab his laptop accidentally bumps into Kingston, who sits silently. Using only his eyes, Kingston gestures toward a pair of broken plastic cuffs lying on the floor, proof that Ralph has escaped. Panic sets in as the others realize Bev is no longer with him. Meanwhile, Ed rips up the carpet on the floor, revealing a hole that leads to the cargo hold. At the same time, Neil retrieves a firearm from his bag, while Jenny manages to secure Sheila's medical pack. A sudden scare comes when Ed feels a mouse run across his foot. He jumps back, shouting that it's a rat. Henry, however, suspects it might be one of his own hamsters, especially after noticing the destroyed cage. As Jenny climbs out of the cargo space, she spots a laptop drenched in blood. Glancing toward the rear of the plane, she sees the co-pilot crawling quickly on all fours, snarling and covered in gore. Suddenly, another zombie lunges at Jenny from behind. Neil fires his gun, killing it instantly, but some of the pilot's blood splashes onto his face. The others rush to help, but their efforts achieve little. The group finally escapes the plane, only to discover that the passenger who had been searching for his laptop lies dead, a vicious bite wound in his neck. Jenny then hears Bev sobbing for help, but when she approaches, Bev suddenly transforms into a zombie and attacks. Jenny barely manages to evade her, and the others slam the door shut, barricading it to keep her out. While Sheila focuses on treating Paula, the group regathers. Susan wipes the blood from Neil's face, and in a moment of desperation, the two press their lips together. But as Jenny looks around the room, she spots fresh streaks of blood across the floor, and a chilling dread creeps in as she wonders what horrors are still to come. Finally losing her temper, Jenny orders everyone to be quiet and assumes leadership now that the captain has died. She recalls the quarantine department shown on the news, while Sheila clarifies that what is happening is not a familiar disease. Kingston notices a rat with bright red eyes nearby, but since he can barely speak, his warning goes unheard. The rat lands on his head, and George manages to pull it off after it bites him. Meanwhile, Sheila tends to his wound as the men trap the rat inside a bucket. Because both George and Paula could potentially transform into zombies, the group decides to confine them inside a box. Ed then puts on a glove, catches the rat, and notices marks on its paw, suggesting that it escaped from a laboratory before ending up here. George insists that he saw a long tail in the cage earlier and believes Henry took it while lying about having a hamster. Jenny confronts Henry privately, demanding the truth. Henry swears that he is innocent and argues that lab rats would never pass security checks. As the two embrace for comfort, Ralph suddenly appears and leaps onto Jenny, ignoring Henry's attempts to stop him. Hearing her screams, the other men rush to help, and together they strangle Ralph with a hose until finally he dies. At that moment, Ed receives a transmission over the radio announcing that a CDC team has arrived. Everyone gathers near the entrance, but instead of releasing them, policemen step inside. They confiscate Neil's firearm along with the captured rat, then hold the group at gunpoint before injecting Paula and Kingston. When the passengers demand an explanation, the police only insist that it is necessary. They then pressure the others to accept injections as well. Nobody volunteers at first, until a woman with a cat steps forward, only for the cat to suddenly bite her neck and flee, revealing it too has turned into a zombie after consuming Ralph's vomit. A police officer fires his gun but misses every shot. Moments later, Kingston mutates into a zombie and lunges at the man, biting him. After Kingston is killed, the remaining officers attempt to evacuate the bitten policeman but discover the door is locked. A passenger seizes the chance, shoots the officer, and forces open the door to escape. But once outside, the police open fire on them, gunning them down. Only one agent survives with a leg wound, and before the door shut, the group drags him back inside. The sound of approaching zombies grows louder, forcing the survivors to hide inside a shipping container. Inside, Susan freezes in horror when she notices Neil foaming at the mouth. The others confirm he has been infected, but Susan reacts too late. As her husband mutates into a zombie, He attacks her, and finally, she dies. After sealing the container, Sheila observes that the injections given earlier were not identical, as each contained a different colored liquid, meaning they were not a standard protocol. Determined to extract answers, Henry claims he has a gun to threaten the captured cop. Under pressure, the man confesses he is not with the CDC at all, but with the Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Terrorism Group under Homeland Security. He reveals that the quarantine department was the origin of the outbreak, and that no one has emerged alive from the building in hours. In truth, a cult had set up a bioterror lab in its attic. He explains that the group now trapped here will likely be used as the next round of experiments to develop a supposed cure, one that only worsens the infection. Losing hope, grabs Henry's gun, and finally, he kills himself. Ed remembers that the terminal frequently floods due to old drainage tunnels, suggesting a potential escape route if they can locate them. This news causes one of the female passengers to panic. Suddenly, the zombified co-pilot bursts through a gap in the container wall and grabs Ed's arm. Henry tries to shoot, but realizes his gun is empty. Following Ed's instructions, George operates the cargo lift mechanism, crushing the co-pilot beneath the container platform until finally he dies. The group exits the container, with Ed leading them across the terminal. Jenny soon notices Henry has slipped away. At the back of the line, one of the female passengers is distracted by a noise, while Henry secretly retrieves a backpack filled with extra weapons. Jenny stumbles upon Paula, who is fully transformed into a zombie, and blocks their path. Jenny fights desperately with a wrench until she manages to shove Paula over the platform's edge, killing her, though it breaks her heart to accept the loss of her partner. The survivors finally reach an office and search for terminal maps, which reveal a path to the drainage tunnels by breaking through a wall. During the search, George admits he took Henry's suitcase. Inside, he discovers a mysterious box, suspicious documents, and recordings of lab experiments. Just then, Henry reappears to finish off Zombie Susan and Zombie Neil before they can attack the group. George seizes the chance to open the box, revealing a stash of drugs and syringes. Ed then notices Henry has been bitten. At last, Henry confesses that he's smuggled in the rats and reveals he is part of the cult described earlier. Their mission, he explains, is to purge humanity of destructive people and cruelty. When Henry threatens to kill Jenny unless George hands over the vaccine, Ed bravely rushes to intervene, but is shot dead. Henry injects the vaccine into his own eye, boasting that the cult has infiltrators across multiple organizations, which is how he slipped the rats past security. Terrified, the others step aside, allowing him to claim the vaccine. He declares he will now take George captive and departs with both the boy and the stolen blueprints. Jenny tries to stop him, but is beaten unconscious. When she wakes, Sheila is gone. Moments later, the zombie passenger spots her, triggering a frantic chase. Jenny narrowly escapes by luring it beneath machinery, slamming a hatch cover down onto its head until it dies. Pressing forward, she continues her pursuit of George, only to encounter another zombified woman blocking her way. Forced to change course, Jenny enters another room and unexpectedly finds Sheila, who has just stolen the officer's thermal goggles. Sheila admits she has been bitten and urges Jenny to keep moving. She hands the goggles to Jenny, then runs back toward the main chamber. Screaming at the top of her lungs, she lures the zombies toward herself until they overwhelm her, and finally, she dies. Pressing onward, Jenny finds a hole in the wall dug out by Henry. As she crawls toward it, another zombie ambushes her. Fighting back with her wrench, she finally kills it. Putting on the goggles, Jenny climbs into the narrow space between the walls, determined to continue her pursuit. As she does, she sees blood dripping on the ground. She also finds a lot of rats, but they aren't lab rats. She has a horrible reaction whenever she encounters any animal. Jenny finds Henry's clothes near the stairs adjacent to the access to the drainage tunnel as she continues to follow the blood trail. The person she finds when she looks down is George, and he says that the vaccine doesn't work and that Henry has turned into a zombie. She chooses to ignore George's statement, and when Jenny goes downstairs, she observes that there is blood dripping on her glasses. Suddenly, Henry appears and launches an attack on her, causing her to lose her glasses before he starts throwing them. While Jenny tries hard to stop him from moving forward, George puts on his glasses and picks up a gun, and thus stops Henry. Jenny, now free, reclaims the goggles and delivers a blow to Henry's head with a wrench, and finally, he dies. At that point, a large fire emerges from the hatch, signaling that the team outside is actively destroying the terminal. Jenny finally finds the baggage tunnel and kicks in the lid, even though the exit is sealed. Since George is too scared to crawl there, Jenny gives him goggles and allows him to crawl there first for his own protection. The two escape as fast as they can when they hear the explosions outside, but Jenny is quickly exhausted and learns that she has the zombie virus. Even though George looks back and sees Jenny vomiting, he continues to insist on leaving without her. To show her support for him, Jenny decides to follow him. The iron bars finally block his escape, but George is able to get past them. When George gets outside, Jenny, who has turned into a zombie, tries to get through the bars to attack him. After removing his jacket, George is able to escape because, luckily, Jenny is too big to get through the bars. Quarantine 2 Terminal movie ends with George being lucky enough to escape the airport, and finally, the old lady passenger's zombie cat finally making it out and finding its way into town. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss the latest recaps.